The views and opinions expressed on the following program may not necessarily reflect the views of the staff, management, or board of Hope Media Group and KSBJ. It's what's happening around us, in our town, suburb, city, in our community. It's Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Well, good morning and welcome to Community Beat, where we're keeping you tuned in to the topics that are impacting our local communities and helping them to thrive. I'm your host, Kim Kasi McKee, and today we're raising awareness for hunger in Houston and what one organization is doing and has been doing for many years to make a difference in the lives of thousands of families in our city. Today's guest is Brian Greene, President, CEO of Houston Food Bank, the largest Feeding America food bank in the nation by distribution. Welcome, Brian.
Kim, it's great to be talking to you today.
You too. I just want to share with you a little bit about Brian. He, again, as we said, he's the president and CEO of Houston Food Bank. And since taking this role in 2005, Brian has led the organization to unprecedented growth and development. And in 2015, it was recognized as Food Bank of the Year. And recently, I was looking at the news. I said recently, but it was actually last year in February when President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden toured the Houston Food Bank with Brian to learn about the organization's work during the pandemic and discuss some of those issues that are facing our food banks. In September 2021, Brian was selected from a group of 300 top executives and honored as one of the nonprofit Times' Power and Influence Top 50 for adapting and overcoming hardship of the 100-year pandemic. Wow. Brian, you have been so deeply embedded in hunger relief, having worked at 3 food banks prior to landing in Houston and serving on numerous hunger relief boards, and you've received several awards. Talk a little bit about your history in food banking.
Well, this is not what I intended to do. Of course, there is no such thing as a kid growing up saying, I want to work for a food bank when who would think of that?
Right.
I was actually thinking I was going to be an academic. I was working on a doctorate in economics at University of Tennessee, and I took a leave of absence. I wanted to kind of feel like I was doing a little do-gooder stint, so I wanted to go work for a charity before I got back to what was going to be my real career. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted to do a stint in either hunger or homelessness. Okay. Because I was hoping to have ideas or perspective for a dissertation. Because those are two phenomena that don't make much sense in a rich society. So I was willing to take any job, and for some crazy reason, the board of directors in Knoxville, this was in the early days of food banking, they hired me as the executive director there.
Wow.
And
for some reason, right?
Well, fortunately, the economics program is in the business school. And so when I realized that I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I flipped over and I was taking MBA courses so I could try and catch up on the management skills to actually run an organization. Wow. But anyway, I ended up falling in love with the work because it's the opportunity to have, impact for so many people is really gratifying. And it's changed so much over the years. We've learned so much over the years. It's stayed very relevant to me and very rewarding.
Wow. You talked some on the video on your homepage about food banking and its history going back to the 60s. And it was really intended to be something that would be temporary, and how that has evolved and become a necessary staple.
Yeah. In the early days of food banking, our theory of change was essentially that we could actually end hunger in the United States through food banking. And the reason why we thought this was possible is if you look at how much hunger there is and you look at how much surplus food there is, there's actually way more surplus food than there is hunger. And I'm not talking about your table scraps. We can't do anything about that.
Right.
I'm talking about the waste that happens at the grocery store, at the distribution center, at the manufacturer, at the farm. There's just billions and billions of pounds of that. And so food banks were developed to be a conduit that would go get that surplus and then channel it through a network of partner charities. Okay. Most of them being church pantries that, help families in need. And the thinking was, well, if you just did enough of that, at least on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't have hunger. We actually are distributing more food than what that gap was when I started.
Wow.
And they still see just as much hunger. And our theory of change was clearly wrong.
Wow. I've been hearing these terms lately, things like food deserts and food insecurity. Talk a little bit about the scope of hunger in our city.
Sure. So a food desert is where within a reasonable walking or driving distance, you don't have access to a supermarket that has healthy foods.
Okay.
So most of the food deserts that you see are actually rural. And that makes sense just, because a store needs enough customers in order to supply that market. And obviously you're not going to have one every half a mile in a densely or a lightly populated area. But you also see them in lower income urban areas as well. Now, food deserts are I think, widely misunderstood as there's the work that has been done to address them. The reality of a food desert is mostly it's a demand issue. Supermarkets love selling produce. That's actually amongst their highest markup items.
Okay.
But you have to be able to move enough produce to make it so that the waste that you have with produce, as as it goes bad, you can't sell that. So you have to have enough people buying it in order to make it work.
Short shelf life on it.
Yeah. So the reality of a food desert is trying to solve that is, we need to get those stores to go into that area. Look, if they can't make the math work, they can't make the math work. So it really is trying to build demand. And that's where you look at, it isn't just a function of how much income there is in the neighborhood, but how much is that translating into purchasing power that is driven towards fresh foods. This is why if you look at like our food desert maps that you have in Houston, the areas that are heavily recent immigrant population, first generation especially, those are not food deserts.
Okay.
Because most of these people are coming from a country where they ate fresh fruits and vegetables heavily. That was lower cost where they came from. Now, the way our food supply has evolved in the U.S., actually, fresh fruits and vegetables actually tend to be more expensive.
Right.
Processed foods, oddly enough, are cheaper. But anyway, so the phenomenon is actually much more complex than it looks. And the solutions are more complex because it really is about making sure that there's enough demand to make it work. Ultimately, I think that food deserts are going to be solved through delivery. Brick and mortar stores are pretty expensive. The small stores, it's very hard for them to have enough stock to make it work. The larger stores, they can't get enough traffic in order to make it work. And what we're seeing is just the cost of delivery is going down, down, down. That's ultimately, I think that's going to be solved. Now, food insecurity is different. Food insecurity is you don't have enough resources for a consistent, healthy diet. Okay. Hunger is a subset of that. Most of the time, a family that is food insecure is going to make nutritional compromises.
Okay.
This goes back to that phenomenon in the United States where good nutrition is actually more expensive than bad nutrition or poor nutrition. And so you can ramen noodle it up. The junk foods, which actually turns out to be, our brains are hardwired to enjoy them more. High salt, high fat, high sugar. Well, our brains crave that anyway. And that tends to be cheaper.
Right.
So that's how usually the families get by if they don't have enough resources for a healthy diet. Is not so much by going hungry, but then a subset will actually go hungry. If today's a typical day, according to the Census Bureau, if you look at the 18 counties served by Houston Food Bank, about 60,000 people will go hungry today, and about 5,000 of them being kids.
Wow.
Is a typical day. So that's the actual where, they flat out, the money's run out, everybody in the household loses, and they don't have anything to eat. So now they actually go hungry. That's the rate at which that happens.
Wow. And like you said, when you say hungry, you're saying they don't have anything.
Yeah. So it's food insecurity when you don't have enough in order to be consistently eating healthy.
Sure.
And it's hunger when you now have the painful, uneasy sensation because you lack the resources and you're flat out skipping the meals.
Wow. Also, in looking at your website, it appears that the typical person that needs your services may not be what people would imagine.
Sure. Yeah. When I started in food banking, I can pretty comfortably say we didn't measure this very well, but most of the people we served were usually temporarily unemployed.
Okay.
So food banks were small, and it was like that sort of emergency need is kind of all we did. We did not meet much of demand at all. We now know that most of the households that we serve, we are measuring this. Most of the households we serve are actually working households. We say, what's going on here? But then you look at the Census Bureau data, and according to the Census Bureau, 2/3 of the food insecure households have at least one adult who works. They're working households. And you can see this as part of the reason why, our theory of change didn't work, that we say, we just provide enough food. The reality is these are working households, but not making enough money. And in the United States, the way our wage system has gone is the rate of families that can't get by on their wages has gone up.
Okay.
So it's almost like the population we're trying to help has actually gone up. And so most of the families that are struggling are working families. This is very different than what most people assume. The other thing to recognize when you talk about food insecurity and working households is food insecurity isn't really about food. Now, when I started, we kind of thought of it that way, but it's not. It's about income.
Okay.
We started to have these surveys where we would, what's going on in the household. And we would find that usually it was over 50%, and would get up as high as 2/3 of the households would report that in the last year, they've had to choose between food and rent.
Wow.
Okay? Similar figure, actually a higher figure would be for food and utilities would be very common. Food and medical costs, that used to be about 1/3 of the households would report that. Now it's about half the households will report that they have to choose at some time in the year between food and medical costs.
Wow.
That's the real story here. It's not about food. It's about income. Food just happens to be the most flexible expense generally.
Okay.
So that's how income insecurity most quickly manifests itself, right? It's like, oh, what am I going to cut back on?
Sure.
I can't pay 90% of my rent, but I can pay 90% of my food cost. I'll just poor nutrition or actually go hungry for several meals. And that's how you make up the difference. It's also the only area where we have something surplus to give. There is no surplus rent. There's no surplus utilities.
Sure.
But you know what? There is a surplus food. Sure. And so, this is our partners we're working with, where so many churches and other organizations, there is a place they can go, but they're getting enough to kind of like help a little bit. But the part to understand here is we're not solving the problem because their total gap is actually still significantly larger than what we have to give, because it isn't a food gap, it's an income gap.
Wow.
And the income gap is a lot bigger than if you just measured how much they're missing in meals.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. Talk a little bit about how does a food bank work? Kind of what does that process look like? So when we talk about these families who need food, they're not coming to your physical address necessarily, but they're being served through various partners.
Yeah. And it's a very important distinction. So you look at the volume that we distribute. So right now we're distributing about 14 tractor trailer loads of food per day.
Wow.
And that's our distribution. We're open 7 days a week, but we're running the truck six days a week. So that would be crazy. Like everybody's going to come to this one facility. Right. That doesn't make sense. We serve 18 counties.
Wow.
So it's through a network of 1,600 partners that we work. And
Incredible.
It's our partners out in the community. They're the ones doing the real work. We're like logistics with a mission is the way I look at it really. And so, we run a fleet of trucks. Generally we have 60 to 70 trucks out a day, out on routes at any given time. And they're running all kinds of, some of them are doing pickups. We go down all the way to the Mexican border. We have about 4 trucks that run to the Mexican border every day, either picking them from Rio Grande Valley, or they're actually pulling in produce from Mexico.
Okay.
And then we have trucks going to the distribution centers. We have trucks that are going to the supermarkets every day. So like our favorite thing that we get from the supermarkets is the meat that hits the sell-by date. If they freeze it on the sell-by date, now you have months according to USDA.
Wow,
and so
awesome.
It's a good resource for us because that's meat they were previously throwing away. So we're doing all these different types of pickups, and then we deliver all of our food to the 1,600 partners. Most of them, it's just like we might go to that stop once a week or once a month, depending on how much they do. And then we have also our kids cafe. These are after school programs and daycares that we do. We have about 110 partners we distribute hot meals to, unitized hot meals to for the kids each day. So it's just a collection. And so how do you get food from the food bank? Well, generally speaking, you don't know it's actually from the food bank.
Right. True.
Because we're working through a partner and they're the ones that are on the front lines, and hey, we're just happy to be helping them out and to do this work. But the way you can access, because we know who they all are, because we work with them, is you can just call our phone number, 713. You'll do the 223-3700. But best way is actually you go to the website, HoustonFoodBank.org, and then there's a tab for need help. And then you can actually put your zip code in, and we show you here are the distribution partners that we work with. There's their hours. This is how you access them. And that's how somebody in need of assistance can get it.
Sure. You are celebrating a milestone right along with KSBJ. I noticed that this is your 40th anniversary.
Well, I didn't know. Is it KSBJ's 42?
1982.
No kidding.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
It is. It is. I can only imagine the evolution of food distribution that is taking place through those years. I saw where in 2011 you opened a larger facility, huge facility.
Yeah. So the reality is we don't meet need. We never have. No food bank in the country has ever actually met need because, again, the need isn't that, oh, this is how much a food gap there is. Is so long as we have families who are financially struggling,
yes,
you're going to have hunger.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just fill the hunger bucket, but we are a resource and we are helping families get by, and we want to do that as much as we possibly can. So that what looked like, wow, this facility, this is going to be able to do so much, and it was like, we've now capped it out, maxed it out.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed to be able to handle about 120 million pounds of distribution a year.
Okay.
And actually we're running at about 150 million pounds a year. We're
Whoa.
renting another 100,000 square feet of space. We have a multi-year lease on
Wow.
that we're hoping to get us by while we're going to build a second facility that'll be in many ways similar to the current one, but actually have some partnership possibilities in there that is different than what we had here. So another thing that changed for food banks, or the way we look at our work, is when we realized that, wow, we're never going to just food bank our way to success here, to really, like, everybody's thriving. One of the things we really got to be focused on working is how do we shorten the line,
Okay.
right?
That's
Serve the
good.
line is where food banks traditionally were. Now it's like shorten the line. And what we found is, this food resource, it's also a financial resource. And that the dollar value of that financial resource is now over $200 million a year. Okay. That's how much
Right.
resources we're providing area charities. And what we're most interested is in the partnerships that are supporting programs to help people not need us.
Okay.
So for instance, we do with most of the community colleges and many of the universities now, we do what we call food scholarships. And the idea of a food scholarship, it's not that it's like emergency food assistance. It's meant to be something that the student relies on, like they would a cash scholarship, to stabilize them so that they're more likely to be able to finish their program. Because the real tragedy is if they don't finish, right?
Sure.
If somebody went hungry a few times while they were in college, that's just a story that they're going to be telling to brag about how they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps or how hard they
Sure.
had it, right? That's not a tragedy. If they're not able to make it because as they're struggling with all of their expenses, and almost everybody who's going to these technical school and community college certificate programs
Sure.
for the middle skills, almost all of them have a job.
Sure.
So they're at least juggling two things, if not also juggling their family,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's rough. And so what we're truly trying to do is stabilize them by providing them a commitment for $2,000 a year worth of food.
Wow. So they actually get food as opposed to
Cash.
cash.
Because we don't have the cash. I mean,
Right.
so, we figure we can do that for tens of thousands of
That
students
is awesome.
because we have so much, the food resources are so large, and there's more.
Okay.
There's still, despite all we're doing now, there's billions of pounds more of capturable food waste. It's not, when I say waste, it's not mean this is bad stuff or something like that. This is
right.
most of what we're able to get now, like most of the produce we get, we're getting it just as fresh as the supermarket.
That's awesome.
It doesn't look as pretty as a supermarket.
Mhm.
It's what they call number twos, where it's bent or too small or it's got an
Sure.
abrasion. And we're doing like about 5-6 tractor trailer loads of that a day.
Wow.
And there's many times more, potential. It's now
It's
43% of our distribution. I'm hoping to get us to way over half of our distribution as fresh produce. And, that's a resource that we need to commit to, not just the students, but also think about people, they were having health problems.
Sure.
Certainly like diabetes is a big issue. Most of our health outcomes have nothing to do with the doctor visit.
Okay.
It's what's happening outside of the doctor visit. The medical experts say, or the health experts say, it's like 80% of health outcomes are not medical care. They're the wellness that happens outside. Hey, we can help
Makes
that,
sense.
because A, we can get all this produce, and B, we can actually provide it to people as a prescription that the doctor or the nurse or whomever is your wellness, your care provider is saying, look, if you do this health wellness program, the food bank will give you all this produce free.
Wow.
As both a resource and an incentive
That is
to do the
awesome.
program. So these are the kind of things we're doing. And when in the new facility that we intend to do, we actually want to then have a clinic in the facility.
A clinic?
Yeah.
Okay.
A full-scale FQHC health clinic, 10,000 square feet, run by someone else, not us.
Sure. Yep. Stay in your lane. Want to do what
we
you do.
do lane.
Well,
So Legacy Health is interested in doing that. We have NAM coming in. We have Tejano Center coming in to provide just different services that we support. Lone Star Community College, even the YMCA. From not just a food prescription, but you have the opportunity for a fitness prescription.
A food prescription. Wow.
So anyway,
Very
it's like we're trying to, bring things together. And then again, just like in the current facility where we really want to be an incredible volunteer center, where this is a destination for people who want to volunteer like an activity, where it's fun and your time is used really well and it's an upbeat experience. And, you help the community and have a good time. We're going to do that in this facility as well. And part of our thinking is also just trying to bring people together.
Sure.
Because part of what we also have to do if we want to get to the point of not needing food banks is, this is going to be about, well, how is it that families, if you're a working family, you need to be making enough that you don't need us? What is it going to take for us as a society to get there? And we think that the people who are struggling and the people who are coming to want to help, we want to get them together to talk about that. Because ultimately, society is going to have to agree on how do we run this so that in a rich society, we don't have hunger.
Wow. So you provide services beyond food. What are some of those things you're doing related to employment or just some of the other things?
So we learned, again, years ago that, while we're doing this, there's sort of things that just kind of that fit with it. And so one of the things that we do is we do SNAP outreach work.
Okay.
We help families sign up for SNAP. Now, if you go to a pantry, that pantry may provide you with $40, maybe $50 if you're lucky worth of food. And most pantries, unfortunately, just because of how much resources they have, will say, well, you can't come back for 30 days. For some people, that might have been enough, right? Maybe they just had, that was their gap. For other families, there's a good chance their gap was actually a lot bigger than that.
Sure.
Now, the average SNAP benefit for a household is over like $280.
Okay.
So $40 versus $280, and you're going to the supermarket to buy your groceries, getting exactly what you want and helping the economy. Sure. Whoa, we like that. So if they're struggling, we want to help them sign up. So we have a department. And so since we're already working with all these pantries, we send our navigators, to the sites to help families who are qualified sign up for SNAP. So we do that. And then, we also recognize that, wow, we got all this healthy food. When food banks started, most of our food wasn't that healthy, frankly.
Sure.
The easiest stuff for us to get was the snacks and code-dated and the carbs and stuff.
Sure.
Now, as I said, over 40% of our distribution is produce. When you add all the other healthy items, it's over 80% of our distribution is healthy foods.
That's awesome.
So that's great.
Yes.
But, wow, do they know how to cook it? Do they know what to do with it? So, we've actually grown a fairly large department of dietitians.
Okay.
To do education, providing materials, and working with our partners on how do we help people use the good foods that we can get, also the good foods that we hope that they're going to be, buying from the supermarkets, and then just overall, changing health behavior. So those are the two biggest things that fall out of that. As I mentioned, most of what we try and do is work with other partners. I mean, there's 25,000 charities in the greater Houston area, supposedly.
Amazing.
I know. But anyway, there's a lot of them are high quality organizations.
Sure.
And the way we look at it is, well, how do I help you in your mission? Because if they succeed in their mission, that's how ultimately we're going to succeed. We used to, years ago, the way the food bank saw it is we had our mission. Other people have their mission. Our mission is we're going to end hunger. We failed.
Okay.
Not going to work.
Okay.
Now we see it as like, okay, I want to help these other organizations in their mission, and the high quality ones that actually are going to shorten the line, going to help people improve their lives. That's how we ultimately win. So most of what we offer is actually just our work with the other partners. Now we have team members who do a lot of things, navigators and the dietitians, et cetera. But mostly it's our work with our partners. That's who we really are focusing on now.
That's amazing. We have a mantra around KSPJ that your success is my success.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it sounds like. That's the kind of reciprocal relationship that you seem to enjoy with your partners. So how do people get involved with the food bank? what does support look like for you? How can people come alongside to hold up the arms of our food bank?
Well, the biggest type of support that we look for is actually volunteers.
Okay.
So this is what made Houston Food Bank the largest food bank, actually, is our ability to say yes to volunteers more than any other food bank, more than any other organization I know of. Like, last year, despite still coming off of COVID, we had 60,000 unduplicated volunteers.
What?
Yeah, 60,000. It was actually several years ago, we set a goal, which at the time sounded crazy. Oh, we want to have more volunteers than the rodeo. And we did it as like one of those big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, they call them.
Yeah, BHAG.
And we had 7,000 volunteers. They had 20,000 volunteers. And it was like, it sounded crazy at the time, but we tried to, how do we make the food bank this really welcoming place? And so one of the things we did is we made so we could have up to 1,000 volunteers at a time. So we built our volunteer work. Oh yeah. Our volunteer workrooms are huge. So we can, put 300 people in this one, 200 people in that one.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you're working.
They will come, right?
And then we put a conference center in so that, companies could like have their meetings there and then put volunteering as part of it.
Ingenious.
The Texans sponsor a cafe for us there. So we have the, caffeine coming. We even have a Starbucks in the facility now.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is quite an operation.
Well, it's meant to be like, wow, we want you to want to come here.
That's great.
Like an activity like, we might go to the zoo. Let's go to the food bank today. Not just something that you did once, but something that you'll want to do. And we really have emphasized trying to make this really work for companies.
Okay.
So it used to be, that we had most of our volunteers were individuals coming on a Saturday. Now, most of our volunteers are actually companies bringing their team on a weekday.
Really?
Yeah. Because, we kind of make it work for them. We, provide a good team building experience. And, we try really hard to make sure that we use your time well.
Sure.
Because if you're going to come here for 4 hours, you don't want me wasting your time. So making sure that we're organized, we've segmented the job so tightly that we can give you your training really quickly.
Sure. So
you get organized, you get trained, you get your safety instructions, and then we start you to work. And then by the end, you make quite a difference. And then you go have a lunch, go home, or go back, go back to your regular job. And we try and make this like, wow, this is your best work day of the year is the day you work with us.
Oh, I love that. So you can accommodate a group size of
up to 1,000.
Okay.
Well, that's not like, for instance, we've had so much that's worked out so well for us. So for instance, that's why we have a Starbucks.
Sure.
Because years ago, Starbucks had their national conference here in Houston. And they were looking, where can everybody go? Right here. And they go, hey, this is really good. Hey, would you like us to give you a coffee? Yeah, we want that. And then that turned out, well, how about if we actually make this a real Starbucks here? And, and they said, sure, we'll do that. And
that is amazing. Wow. So volunteering is obviously just a huge ongoing need, and I'm sure financial support as well. So how can people do that?
Yeah, well, and that's where the volunteering really works, because quite frankly, the people, when they come volunteer and they actually see it and they can see, oh, this is how it works and everything, they know it's like, then they become much better donors.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
So we like
very
that.
Real.
Yeah, but just like with any charity, I recommend check us out. You go to the website, look at our figures and see this is what we do, and then you compare it to other organizations. I do think that when people are making gifts, it matters not just that they give, but that they give wisely.
Sure.
So please kick our tires. The good charities want you to do that, and Houston has a lot of good charities, and we're proud to be one of them.
Awesome. Give us that website again, Brian, where people can go to find out more about Houston Food Bank.
HoustonFoodBank.org. Easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the wonderful work that you have been doing these 30 years in food banking, but you're certainly a gift to our city, having been here for, I believe you said 17
years. Yeah. And it's been a great place because Houston is such a positive city.
Yes.
And if you're trying to make things happen, being in a positive environment is a lot easier.
Wow. Well, that should encourage all of us to want to be that positive light in our city.
Thanks a lot for having me, Kim.
Thank you, Brian. God bless you guys for what you're doing. And thank all of you for joining us for this week's edition of Community Beat. We hope you'll join us next week. I'm your host, Kim Kasi McKee, for 89.3 KSBJ.
Thanks for joining us for Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee. Join us every Saturday morning at 5:30 on 89.3 KSBJ.